Okay, I need to mute that. One watching now. There were two watching. Now there's one watching. I already got one like. How did that happen? Anyway, I'm ready to start, I guess, more or less ready. We had a bit of a delay. I was working on my presentation, and then I was trying to get some people. We may be getting some guests later. And unfortunately, I don't have a proper script, but hopefully this will work out anyway. Let's see. And so this is basically giving an idea of the history of literature over the last couple of millennia, starting with the ancient Near East and hopefully going until maybe the first half of the 20th century. I'm not sure yet. This particular part 1, covers ancient Near East, a brief foray into China, Japan, and India, ancient Greece, and ancient Rome. And then we move on. Hopefully we'll move on to do a little bit on early medieval Latin and the Celtic literatures. Probably won't get to Beowulf and the Anglo-Saxons today. Depends partly on whether any guests turn up, and partly on how long it takes to do this other stuff. It might not take too long if I don't have any guests, but on the other hand, it'll be more fun if we have guests. It'd be more fun to talk about things like Beowulf and stuff like that. So starting with the ancient Near East. Half a moment. Starting with the ancient Near East. I'm not going to say very much about that. Oh, God. That looks so stupid. Anyway, let me see what it looks like on screen. What? That's so stupid. Anyway, so we have ancient Egypt, and we have Sumer. The situation, we have Mesopotamia, and we have ancient Egypt. And I think a map would come in handy here. So let's see. Map of Mesopotamia. I don't want to stop screen. I want to show a different screen. That's not what I want you to do, you stupid thing. Okay. So Mesopotamia. For Mesopotamia, we have the main thing to understand about Mesopotamia is that writing began in Sumer. So far as we know, Sumer is the first place. The Sumerians spoke a language that, so far as we know, again, is unrelated to any other that exists currently. Sumerians, then the Semites came in from the north and invaded and kind of took over. These were the Akkadians. the Akkadians took on Sumerian civilization and the Sumerian script, but adapted it to their own language. So they continued to reproduce Sumerian classics for about several centuries or even several millennia. So the best known Sumerian classic is Gilgamesh. That's referred to in it's referred to twice on Star Trek: The Next Generation. So that should be decently familiar to most people. At least I hope so. So basically the story of that is Gilgamesh is a king in, I think, of Ur several centuries before and he makes a friend. He meets a wild man named Enkidu. They make friends. And Enkidu gets killed. Gilgamesh goes to the other world. Meanwhile, the goddess Ishtar is annoyed that he's spurning her, so she gets revenge in various ways. So that's what that's about. There are also several hymns in Sumerian and Akkadian, and some other poetry, including somewhat steamy poetry. We're not going to get into that. Luckily, I don't have any guests. It's kind of lucky at the moment I don't have any guests, because that's they would probably say something disgusting if they did, if there were any. So in Egypt we have the Book of the Dead, about how the soul is judged after death. I mean, a lot of the remains of Egyptian literature and civilization are maybe a little morbid because a lot of them survive in a lot of the ones that have survived, because papyrus is very brittle. It does survive better in a dry climate like desert, but it still doesn't survive as well as inscriptions, stone inscriptions. So that's what that's about. There's also the well-known story of Isis and Osiris. Osiris gets murdered by his evil brother Seth. His wife, who also happens to be his sister Isis, goes searching for him. She finds Seth has split Osiris into several different pieces. He's chopped them up into bits, and she manages to find most of them except for a certain one, which I'm not going to mention. And if I had any guests, they'd say something disgusting right about now. But I don't, so they didn't. So it's awkward. I should have made myself a script, but yeah. Anyway, what was I going to say? So then Osiris becomes the god of the dead. So that's Egypt, and that's Sumer and Egypt. That's Mesopotamia and Egypt. Mesopotamia also has the oldest libraries, cuneiform being one of the most durable writing materials. There is a fair bit left in cuneiform. Cuneiform also Mesopotamia also influenced the Hittites in Asia Minor. They created a civilization. There are other civilizations in Mesopotamia, like the Elamites. Eventually, they influenced Persia, and we might get into Persia later, but not in this live stream. That may come up that might come up later. So let's see. Oh, I should probably link to this in the, I need to link to this. I need to link to this in a few places. Yeah. Okay, I'm going to link to this in a couple of places before I move on to China and India. And I'm going to link to this and see if I can get some views. Let's see. See if I can get some views, since I went through all the trouble of making this thing. It'd be a pity if no one watched it. You know what I should have done? Yeah, I think I already mentioned that. I should have put gaming in the title. What are you doing? That's not what I do. So I am going to shut up. I am going to link to this, and then we'll move on to China. Yeah. 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 I may end up doing this again on Friday. If no one turns up, I may end up doing this again on Friday. So, okay. Let me move on to China. Pardon me. Okay. Yep, sorry about all the dead air. It's awkward when you're trying to have a conversation with yourself. Anyway, what was I going to say? So, China. In China, the literary tradition in China was dominated by Confucianism. Confucius, okay, 1 second, I'll write with you. Confucius. Confucius, very important figure. Okay, I'm looking it up in I think this is the Penguin edition. Yes, Penguin translation. So, Confucius, little for certain is known about him. He has a biography in in a work called The Records of the Historian, or Shiji, which was completed at the beginning of the 1st century BC. But, who even knows, because of all the legend that had grown up around it. He's supposed to have been descended from a noble family in the state of Sung. In the early years, he was born around the middle of the 6th century BC. He was poor and fond of learning. And he was born in this, and he lived in the state. He lived in the state of Lu. For a while there, he was an official. Then he went around trying to persuade various rulers to follow his advice. His emphasis is on morality, especially a moral character. And basically the ideal is the sage. Following that, there's the good man and the complete man. But he talks for the most part. He's talking about the junzu, or gentleman, and the ideal moral character. He's supposed to be benevolent. Basically, the two main things are two main emphases are political and moral emphasis. But we'll get back to Confucius in a moment. The classics of the Confucian tradition are not all. Some of them are older than Confucius and don't actually directly have anything to do with his teaching. So let me see. Oh, half a moment. I got a notification. Let me see. Okay, I'm sorry. I just got a message. I need to respond. This is pertaining to the thing. I'm talking about China at the moment. India, then we move on to ancient Greece and Rome, and if time, early medieval Latin and Celtic literatures. While streaming for perhaps an hour and a half or so. So anyway, China. China, the classics of Confucianism. It's a fairly narrow canon because the chief classics of the tradition are 9. They're called the 5 classics and the 4 books. The 5 classics are the the Book of Changes, or the I Ching, then the Book of Odes, the Spring and Autumn Annals, the Book of Documents, and the Book of Rites. The Book of Changes is mostly actually about divination, and it has the famous weird, what are they called? Tetragrams, I think they're called the tetragrams. Let me make certain of that. I think they're called the tetragrams. Various symbols that represent okay, that's not it. Actually, I think it is it. Yeah, so that's mainly about divination. The Book of Odes is poetry, ancient poetry. The Book of Odes is mainly poetry. The Spring and Autumn Annals is what what it says it is. It's annals, and they divide the year into spring and autumn. So it'll be spring such and such a year, autumn such and such a year, and it's concerned with the period of the warring states. China was under the Shang dynasty in very ancient times, and then under the Zhou dynasty. The Zhou dynasty, that's either CHOU or ZHOU, depending on which transcription you want to use. The Zhou dynasty kind of became very weak and eventually collapsed, and China became a bunch of warring states, and that's the period that's covered in the annals. Reportedly, they're like very, very bare annals, but the later Confucian scholars got all sorts of moral teachings out of them. So the Book of Documents, moral sayings attributed to the ancients, and the Book of Rites, a book of rituals, because one of the important things for Confucius is following the rituals. So the 4 books, these are later and are more directly connected to Confucianism. The most important one is the Luan Yu, or the oh, half a second, we have a guest. I need to let this chap in.
Hello.
Hello there.
I must admit I don't know much about China, so this is going to be all you. So, do you know that you can full screen that in your? Well, I mean, like you can. Have you ever done? Do you know how to put it into the present mode?
You mean this? You mean this presentation document? This isn't present. This is something else.
Yeah, you press the slideshow thing up top, I believe.
Oh, there is a slideshow thing. This is. How did you know that? You probably haven't used this software because it's not commonly used.
I've used it once or twice.
Open Office?
This kind of presentation mode. Ode, but yeah, I've used OpenOffice a few times.
So how do I get out of full screen, because I want to be able to toggle in and out of it?
Admittedly, I haven't used it in a while, but I think
No, don't do
I
that.
think it's like something with present.
Why are you going down when I'm hitting up? Sorry. Yeah, there should be a way of getting out of this, but I don't know what it is. Oh, you just hit escape. That's easy.
Yeah. But I think that there's probably like something at the bottom, like
Oh, I was going to ask you, as long as I have you here,
go
when
for
you
it.
get a chance. Oh, sorry.
Go for it.
If
No,
you
I
have,
was just
when you get a chance, can you put the correct URL to my Discord, because I sent you the wrong one because I didn't know any better.
sure I can do that.
Cool. Yeah, because I think the right one is the one with the invite. I think that's the correct one. There's no like homepage to a Discord server, so I was thrown off by that because I was looking for something like a homepage and there wasn't any.
I see. Yeah, I think there should be something on the bottom, I guess. Like there should be something like where you can go like full screen on the presentation, so it doesn't show. So it just shows the document.
Yeah, I mean I can do what I did before and hit escape afterwards. The only thing is that I'm also relying on a text document. I didn't get time to put the text in here. I wasted a lot of time last night trying to fix the Prezi thing, and I couldn't get Prezi to work for me properly. So I said, hang it, and I used this one instead. So that's one reason why I got delayed. I'm gonna have to get something to eat too in a moment, but I can talk while eating. That'll be a little awkward. So I was talking about the classics of the Confucian tradition. You've probably heard of the I Ching, the Book of Changes. That's the one with all those weird symbols in it. It's divination. You've heard of that one, probably.
No, I actually haven't. My education in terms of Chinese stuff was very, very minimal.
Okay, but you know who Confucius is.
Yes, I'm aware of Confucius. Yeah, he's the guy who is part of the major memes of Confucius Say, but he's actually like a very intelligent and cultured philosopher who had a lot of interesting things to say about honor, family, duty, that sort of thing.
Yeah, that particular meme is ancient, because I remember visiting Chinatown in San Francisco around the year, would it have been in the mid 70s or mid or late 70s, sometime like that. We visited there, and there was this book about sayings of Confucius. So I pick it up, and it's Confucius say blah blah blah. I'm like, oh God, no, this is just so stupid. And so I was not impressed by that, but I knew that Confucius was a great philosopher, which is one reason why I wasn't impressed, because I'm like, come on, I wanted something real. So I actually have the book, the Analects, and you're about to see something disgusting because it's spelled Analects. So you're probably going to see something disgusting right about now, but anyway. Be that as sorry?
Whatever do you mean? I'm as innocent as a lamb.
Good. Well, in Chinese it's Luan Zhu. In Chinese I think it's called the Luan Yu. The Luan Yu. It's really I don't know how to pronounce these words properly. So when the way prevails in the state, speak and act with perilous high-mindedness. When the way does not prevail, act with perilous high-mindedness, but speak with self-effacing diffidence, whatever that means. there's actually quite a lot of, there's quite a lot of, some of it's actually quite charming. I don't know if I can find any examples in your offhand, but there are quite a lot of charming little things. Wealth and sorry?
I bet there are.
Wealth and high station are what men desire, but unless I got them in the right way, I would not remain in them. Poverty and low station are what men dislike, but even if I did not get them the right way, I would not try to escape from them. But there's another one, half a second. This is... Oh, sorry, I put the book in the wrong place. So, where in here I have the Chinese. I have another nice little bit from. I have a book about the history of like the major languages of the world, which ones were important, and then why they became important, why they became unimportant afterwards. It's called Empires of the Word. It's pretty interesting. But what I'm trying to find is, if Zelu said, if the Prince of Wei were awaiting you, sir, to take control of his administration, what would be the master's priority? The one thing needed is the correction of names, the master replied. Are you so wide of the mark as that, sir? Said Zelu. Why this correcting? How uncultivated you are, you, responded the master. A wise man, in regard to what he does not understand, maintains an attitude of reserve. If names are not correct, then statements do not accord with facts. And when statements and facts do not accord, then business cannot be properly executed. When business is not properly executed, order and harmony do not flourish. When order and harmony do not flourish, then justice becomes arbitrary. And when justice becomes arbitrary, people do not know how to move hand or foot. Hence, whatever a wise man states, he can always define, and what he so defines, he can always carry into practice. For the wise man will on no account have anything remiss in his definitions. It's actually Lun Yu, not Luan Yu. I was saying it totally wrong. So that's Confucius. The other two are Mencius and the other one is Mencius, and there's also the Great Learning and Doctrine of the Mean. Those are of the mean. That's M-E-A-N, not M-E-M-E, not the doctrine of the meme, the doctrine of the mean. So that's
like the thing in the middle, right?
Yeah. So that's Confucianism. There's also Taoism. I'm not going to say much about that. There's the Tao De. The classic for that is the Tao De Jing, supposedly by Lao Tzu. And no one's going to catch these names, I'm afraid. Probably including me. There's also a chap named Zhuangzi who dreamt he was a butterfly, and he wasn't sure afterwards if he was a butterfly or a man. The Taoists were kind of hippie-ish and kind of into quietism and all that. They were just, kind of passive. Oh, I learned a poem when I was in school which I think was by a Taoist. Up in the hills, what have I? In the mountains, there are many white clouds. What was that?
Sorry, I got something caught in my throat.
Oh, I thought you were laughing.
No, I was coughing.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, it's fine.
Where was I? Up in the mountains, there are many white clouds, but they are only for my own enjoyment. They cannot be caught and sent to your majesty. So that's that. There are a couple others. Xuanzi teaches that human nature is basically bad. Mozi, universal love.
I don't really disagree with him.
Xuanzi, well, it's complicated. The original sin, it's the doctrine of original sin, but of course, if the doctrine of the fall implies that human nature is basically good but became worse. Oh, and for ancient Near East, I should have mentioned that the Old Testament is our main is perhaps the easiest guide for the average person, because you can just pick up a Bible anywhere, and that'll give you, in terms of ancient Near East, that'll give you a window into that. Now, you may have heard of some of the later romances. I think at least one of them was made into a film. Another one was made into a television show. The television show was several decades ago, though. So, are you familiar with Monkey?
I have heard him mentioned across several things, but I have never engaged. The Lenwood Thompson lecture that I watched as my high school history class for world history only briefly covered stuff on ancient China. It was mostly on kind of a general overview of the various dynasties.
Yeah. He's the source of that is the Journey to the West, which actually has an historical basis. There was a Chinese monk named, and of course his name is going to be something like Xuanzang. Can anyone tell any of these names? It's hard if you're a Westerner to tell these names apart, really. But his name is Xuanzang, and he's actually an historical figure. Not the monkey, obviously, that we know of. So he traveled to India as a pilgrim, and he wrote down his account. But then later on, a novel or a romance was made based on it. And this includes a bunch of supernatural figures like Monkey, Pigsy, and I think Sandy, who was a fish. And they're all traveling around the place. The monkey gets, as some kind of punishment of some kind, he gets sent to accompany Xuanzang and protect him. So that's what that's about. There was a television show, a Japanese television show based on it in the 70s. It wouldn't surprise me if things would be done based on it later. It's pretty well known. The Romance of the Three Kingdoms, was there an anime based on that, or a film or something?
Probably. There's an anime based on everything.
Yeah. Yeah. And then there's The Dream of the Red Chamber, which I can't remember. What? Sorry?
30 Weeps.
Yeah, Weebs. God help us. God help us. Anyone in the chat? Probably not. Okay.
30 Weeps with their tentacle stuff.
Yeah. Oh, tentacles. That reminds me of something disgusting.
H.P. Lovecraft?
No, although he's kind of disgusting too.
Yeah, he's a neurotic, crazy racist.
Yeah. That's what
even though I've been listening to some of his Cthulhu stuff, and it's very, very well written. There's kind of little bits of it's just like, wow, this is really racist.
Yeah,
you can't get away with this now.
No, it was probably written during the heyday of segregation and all that lovely stuff too. So
I think it's actually might be pre-segregation. I think it's like 1900 or something.
Oh well, segregation was coming. Segregation de facto existed by then, and they were putting it into law. And they'd been putting it into law ever since the Hayes Compromise, where they said, okay, we'll vote for Rutherford Hayes if we and in exchange we'll get Reconstruction will be canceled. And so that's what happened. And needless to say, the next thing you knew, the blacks were being terrorized and all that. It was lovely. But anyway, it was.
Yeah. It was not a good time.
No, not really. Not really. Whatever. Not really. Not a good time. But yeah, I was thinking actually of Hokusai. Hokusai apparently drew pictures and maybe sculpture too of women doing things with tentacled creatures. So That's why it reminded me of something disgusting. But now I can't even remember where. Oh, because you said tentacles, I think. So let me see. The Dream of the Red Chamber, I think, has to do with the afterlife or something like that. Okay, and then there are some poets. I'm almost done with China. There's some poets, like a chap named Li Bo, who got drunk and looked at the moon. I bet he was probably Taoist. A lot of these people, I think, are Taoists. Tao Hung Jing is the chap I was quoting from earlier, the chap with the mountains and clouds and stuff. And then there's a chap named Zhao Yi, 18th century, apparently. So, and there's also Chinese operatic tradition, but I can't get into that too much. It's more or less contemporary with ours, but it's a very different. Opera began like the beginning of the 17th century here, and around the same time in China. So, half a second.
I imagine that was quite the riot back then.
What, is Becca here?
No, she is not.
Oh, I thought you said someone's here. I thought you had said her name. Sorry.
Well, no, I just said that was probably quite the riot.
Yeah. Half a second. Yeah. Okay. Japan, really quickly. We have pseudo history and myth, like from the 8th century, like the ancient chronicles and the Japanese chronicles, Kojiki and Nihon Shogi, and that's where the mythology is mainly located. The whole business of the emperor being descended from the sun goddess, and all that, and the story of the origin of the gods.
Yeah, the son of the sun is how it was explained to me.
Yeah, supposedly, and they have these relics that supposedly come direct from Amaterasu, the sun goddess herself. Now, the sun goddess got offended. There's a story. The sun goddess got offended by her brother, and hid in a cave, and the world was plunged in darkness. So they had to let her out, had to get her to come out somehow. So what happened was a goddess did an obscene dance, and the gods all laughed, and she was curious as to what was going on. So she peeked outside, and then they pulled her out. So that's that. There's a bunch of other stuff in there. And then there's the Tale of Genji. Basically, a chap falls in love with, you know what I should do? I should switch to the Japan slide. Half a second. I should switch to that really quick as long as I have it on here anyway. There. That's the Tale of Genji, I believe. So basically, the chap falls in love with she'd be considered underage now. I think she's in her teens. Then they fall in love, and she dies. Sorry to spoil it for you. The interesting thing is it's by a female author, because the men were all writing in Chinese. They didn't want to. They weren't going to lower themselves to write in Japanese. So a lot of these literature is written by women. So, later on we get the 47 Ronin. There must be an anime based on that.
There is a very bad Hollywood movie based on it that I have not seen. That is apparently was a big budget, one of the biggest big budget bombs ever made.
Yeah. Okay, half a second. I'm getting lunch. Say something. Say something funny. I'll be right back. I'm getting lunch.
Uh, Mr. Balerion is a goodman. He's very very nice.
What? No way.
I don't know why he invited me on this stream because he's actually fairly wholesome and conservative, and I am not.
Okay. There we are. And the other thing Japan is known for, of course, is haiku. And let me see. Well, I don't think I need to read an example of that, but everyone knows about. And we have to move on to India because we want to get on to Greece sometime in the next hour or so. Hopefully, the next half hour, actually, because Greece is was supposed to be kind of the main event. So
yeah, Greece is definitely the thing that I came on for.
Yeah, Greece. Yeah. So
all that hedonism has to go somewhere.
Oh yeah, and there'll be plenty of opportunities to be discussing when we talk about Greece.
And mainly, like, Zeus is just creepy as crap.
Zeus, God help us. In fact, there was even a song about it in an operetta by Offenbach, where all the gods are telling Jupiter about Jupiter. They basically mean Zeus, and they're telling us the stories about all his various escapades, and
the original sex pest.
Oh God, yes.
Honestly, it just seems as though Zeus was basically like Donald Trump.
Well, only worse.
Yeah.
Back in the day, that's what we knew. That's back in the day. That's what we knew Trump for mainly.
Yeah, it's kind of just that was the meme of Donald Trump is that he's a sex pest.
Yeah, kind of. That's where it came into the news back in the day. Not to get too political, but yes.
That's not even political. That's just gossip.
Yeah, it's like the way people make fun of Clinton, and there was a really good one in Saturday Night Live where Moses is revealing the Ten Commandments, and he comes to do not commit adultery, and Clinton comes in and starts quibbling with him about it. It was actually pretty funny. That was back in the day. But although maybe had to be there, but yeah, Basho is the name. There's a couple others, but that's the one. 17th century. I think he's the best known haiku author. So India, we're going to have to be really perfunctory, I'm afraid, when it comes to India. And I need to move it would be a pity to go through all the trouble to make this presentation and not actually show any of the slides. So there we go, India.
That just kind of makes you think of the just absolutely terrible casual Indian racism in Master of Disguise.
What, Indian racism or anti-Indian racism?
No, very much Indian racism. There's a moment where it's just like, like where he dresses up in lit, where the main character like has to dress up in an Indian getup and be an Indian prince.
Oh no.
And as part of like not even part of the plot as just his practice before he as kind of his practice to becoming master of disguise, and he puts on brown face, and it's really really weird now. It wasn't funny then. It's still bad.
Is this another Transformers film?
No, this is a Happy Madison film.
And what year was this produced? In 1896?
No, mid 2000s.
Good God, we really have been regressing this century. So, India. Okay. Sorry, India, I can't really do you proper justice. India's like one of the major, like China, it's on level with China in terms of being one of the major traditions. India, China, Greece. So it's a pity to have to go over it so quickly.
Yeah, it's a big piece of like there's some immense amounts of culture in India that you don't really get anywhere else, really.
Yeah, the fact that India managed to influence China, and China was like
Super
and
insular.
China was like, they thought they were the center of the world. So the fact that they were able to influence China tells you something right there. So the two big epics are the Mahabharata and the Ramayana. And I'll be right back. And from what I know of the Mahabharata, it's basically about this family that they have a falling out, and it becomes a nasty, bloody, brutish war. But there's more to it. Sorry?
Like you do.
Yeah, the way you do, and the way you do, and but there's also lots of mythological stuff attached to it, just as with the Iliad you get, or the Odyssey or whatever, you might have bits and bobs of mythology tossed in. Actually, mythology is fairly basic to it. The bit of the Mahabharata that people have heard of is the Bhagavad Gita, which I read a long time ago as a kid, a very long time ago. I remember not being
not terribly impressed by it.
Well, I don't know. Maybe I was too young for it, but you see, the thing is, here's the issue. Arjuna, one of the guys who's fighting, feels bad about fighting his kinsman. He wants to have peace. So he goes and has a bit of a crisis of conscience. And Krishna appears to him in all his glory and splendor. Krishna. So does he say, yes, you should try to make peace? Not a bit of it. He says you should go back to fighting the war because you're a kshatriya, you're a warrior. That's your caste. So that's what you're meant to do. So you just go and do it. So he does. So I don't know. I guess you can't expect much better in an epic. You're not going to have peacemakers don't amount to much in an epic, but still. That's a bit disappointing. The Ramayana, basically, Rama, his wife Sita gets captured by a demon and or monster in Ceylon, and he has to rescue her, and so he rescues her with the help of a monkey god. That's like kind of so short, it's not even funny. It's just ridiculous how abbreviated that is. But that's one of the major classics of Indian literature. And
I think it was actually like Princess, the movie adaptation of The Little Princess. Used that as a big part of their part of its story.
The Little Princess, is that the one about the girl who lives in India?
I think this was about the girl whose father dies during the war, and her fortunes are immediately reduced. So she has to work as a kitchen slut, basically a kitchen girl, to pay off her tuition due to her father dying in the war and leaving her no money.
Is that the book by the same lady who wrote The Secret Garden? Or am I confused?
It probably was.
Because it seems I remember my little sister having a book like that.
It's probably the same person.
Yeah, because India was a big thing in English literature in like late 19th, 20th centuries.
Yeah,
so
it would make sense. I definitely think that.
So, if you're looking for inspiration for fantasy and you're sick of using Western stuff, you could do worse than familiarize yourself with the Ramayana. So also there's a dramatic tradition, Kali, and the only chap I have here for that is Kalidasa's Shakuntala, which the king marries the lady, then she gets cursed and he forgets about her, but luckily they get together again. I think he dies and comes back, and they end up getting together again, and they end up being the ancestors of the people in the Mahabharata. And half a second, there's a couple more Indian things to mention. Okay, sorry about that.
You're fine.
Oh, I need to grab something. I had a whole bunch of books ready. Okay, the Pancha Tantra. That's a bunch of stories fables with a kind of a frame story and a bunch of fables, and they're all connected because various characters tell stories, and then other characters tell stories, and so forth. It's very readable, and let me see. There's an amusing bit at the end. There lived a king. Sorry?
As there often is.
As there often is. There lived a king named Immortal Power. Blah, 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 blah. This king had 3 sons. Their names were Rich Power, Fierce Power, Endless Power, and they were supreme blockheads. So,
I've definitely seen the inspiration on your writing.
Weirdly, I haven't even read that for years and years and years, and this isn't even properly the Pancha Tantra. That's just a quote from the Pancha Tantra in this other book about Tolkien.
Huh. Interesting, because I'm just kind of the way of referring to people is very similar to what you wrote.
in the sense that it's got an element of satire. Okay, there are also a vast number of genres and other several subjects, including philosophy, and I was going to look up an Indian philosopher, but I couldn't find out who it was. Like monism, dualism, stuff like that. Linguistics, the grammar of Panini, it's a very abstract form of linguistics. And a lot of this is in verse. The verse is kind of quantitative, kind of like Greek and Latin verses, based on long, short syllables. But I'll say a tiny bit about that later under Rome if we get to Rome today. Hopefully we'll get to Rome today, because we need to move on to...
There's a very specific cadence, is what you're saying.
Yeah, it's like long, short. And I can't do it in Sanskrit because, well, you can see this stuff on the screen here. There's no way I can read that stuff. So, but it's based on some syllables being longer, others being da. So now we moved on to Greece. Okay, antiquity, and here we are, Greece. That's a bit of Homer for you. And this is where it comes the fun part. So we should probably... I'm not sure I should have spent so much time on China, but China is just interesting. So, epic. I don't have to introduce the Iliad and the Odyssey to people particularly.
Nah, it's been made into at least 4 movie and TV adaptations at this point. So,
I bet there are more than that.
Yeah, that I can think of off the top of my head that I have watched.
Wasn't one of them by Benioff?
He was the script guy. He was like a script doctor, I think, on Troy. Yes.
He didn't do any actual writing, did he?
I think he was part of a team with that one. I don't think he actually did.
What, Benioff team? Benioff is not a team player.
He usually tries to get some kind of fall guy.
Yeah. So, and then there's Hesiod, who wrote the Theogony about the gods and goddesses and how Uranus, I'm going to say Uranus, begat Kronos.
That's fine.
Yeah.
Uranus. Or Uranus, either one.
I'm just going to say Uranus because I don't want people making disgusting jokes about it otherwise. But he was kind of they were all kind of rotters, if we're honest.
There's no such thing as a benevolent Greek god.
Not really. I mean, the best thing to say about them is they don't generally demand human sacrifices.
Yeah, that's kind of the only thing that kind of like separates them from like the awful pagan gods.
Yeah.
Like Dagon or stuff like that.
Yeah, the ones that get mentioned in various places in the Old Testament.
Yeah, like Molech. Molech's awful. Molech's particularly nasty.
Did they sacrifice children to him?
Yeah, and they specifically put the children in his flaming on an idol with flaming arms. That's where they put That's where they put the kids.
Well, Anakin would approve, I guess.
Yeah.
So then Kronos, I mean, we're in Greece. Kronos eats his children, but luckily Zeus escapes and is born and kills him.
Well, luckily being debatable. Zeus is terrible.
Zeus, at least Zeus didn't eat his children. So I'll give him that. For my knowledge, he didn't eat any of his children, not that I know of anyway.
Well, he swallowed his turned his significant other into a fly, and then swallowed her for her wisdom.
Oh, how romantic!
Hey, you remember that bit? Athena's mom, Metis.
Yeah, because he was born from the son of. She was born from the head of Zeus,
which is weird.
Well, he's the original Emperor.
Yeah, including literally like giving birth to his son Dionysus after he immolated his mother.
Yeah, to be fair, he immolated her by accident.
True. Well, it was mainly like Hera was being Hera.
You know what? I can't help sympathizing just a teeny tiny bit with Hera.
Oh yeah, her husband's a dick.
Yeah.
He's a horrible and foul creature that should never have been made the king of the gods.
Yep. He's like the last one who should have been king of the gods. Maybe Pluto would have been a better king of the gods than him. Hades, I mean. Yeah.
Hades has that. I think because Hades has that stuff with Persephone.
Yeah. Apart from that, though, I mean, he's the king of the dead, but, hey.
He's probably lonely and bored.
Yeah, can you blame him, really?
Well, we could say that about all kidnappers, really.
Yeah. I mean, you can blame him from the point of view of this young lady didn't ask to be brought along to Hades. So you can sort of, yeah. On the other hand, Zeus kidnapped like kidnapped globs and globs and globs of people. Kidnap being kind of a euphemism here.
Yeah, women being raped by swans is the operative word here, or is the operative phrase in this case.
Yeah. He turned into a bull. He also turned into golden rain once. And no comment. I know you're dying to say something. No comment.
I have reined it in for most of it. I'm going to keep this relatively academic.
I know, but well, I have to say that anyway.
You have to be.
Actually, if you do want to say something disgusting now and then, you can, but of course I'll tell you to die horribly if you do. So.
I'm not. Well, don't worry. I don't really have that many horrible things to say. The Zeus kind of does it himself.
Yeah, pretty much. That's the thing with Greek. You don't have to say anything disgusting. It's already saying disgusting stuff, and Rome's disgusting too. I don't know was there something in the water back then? I don't know what was going on. So there's that, and then there's Apollonius, Rhodius, Argonautica, Jason, and the Golden Fleece. And Jason is an example of the fact that a lot of Greek heroes are cads.
Him and Hercules.
And Theseus. Theseus really annoys me. The lady, if you hadn't been for the lady, you would have been munched alive by the Minotaur. So
Yeah.
shut up. Just don't you go jumping the lady like that. She laid it on the line for you. You don't act like that.
Yeah, it's either he kind of forgot about Ariadne and all she'd done for him, or Dionysus wanted a hot wife and told him, Theseus sawed off, I would like to marry this girl, leave her behind. Either way, Theseus looks like a dick.
Yeah. I mean, she ends up okay out of it because of. She ends up okay because of that, because Bacchus or Dionysus.
Bad husband.
Yeah.
He's a drunken party boy, but it said that like he treated her well, so
He treated her better than Theseus did.
yeah, better than Theseus treated his other wives. Like Theseus tried to run after Persephone, which is just like, dude, no, you're not. You ain't getting that. You're a moron. Besides, Hades is not exactly the forgiving type. He's pretty nasty.
Yeah, so Jason is similarly caddish. He abandons Medea. Is it Medea or Medea? Medea.
Is Medea is how I pronounce it, even though like that's the name of the awful Tyler Perry series.
Who series?
Tyler Perry does a series where he dresses in women's clothing and pretends to be a stereotypical big mama.
Oh, that sounds highly tasteful and refined and witty.
Well, at least he's not a white man doing it. That would be weird. But it's just like stuff like a Medea Christmas where they kind of talk about like the joys of the Christmas Jubilee. It's just like, Mr. Perry, I understand that you are a devout Christian, but you're giving Christians a bad name. You're also giving, like, even like your fellow African Americans hate what you're doing, so please stop making these awful movies.
Yes, please do. So she kills her children, and a lot of Greek myth is a downer.
Yeah. Pretty much.
Pretty much. So that's the epic. But not to worry, there'll be more mythology when I get to drama. I'm not going to say much about the lyric because not only do I not know much, I don't know much. I'm not terribly interested in lyric poetry generally. So I'm not going to say much about that.
Oh, me neither. I generally don't like lyric poetry either.
I mean, it's nice enough, but I'm just not.
I don't even like listen to poetry. I just don't do it.
In this period, we're talking about, you don't just have lyric poetry. You have epic poetry. You have just different types of poetry. Drama is also mostly poetry. And like I was saying, it's a quantitative meter. I'll say a little bit more about that when it comes to Rome, because I can give examples of Latin. I can't give examples from Greek. So in terms of lyric, we've got Pindar, who wrote about in praise of athletes. We have Sappho, who lived on the island of Lesbos, and
from him we get most of our nomenclature around LGBTQ stuff.
From her, yeah, because she went into both sexes, so hence lesbianism. So that's where that comes from. Apparently, she was quite busy. And unfortunately, we have to say a little tiny bit of something about the pastoral. Uh, so, unfortunately, bless you, or something like that.
Well,
Yeah,
the past is hashtag most problematic.
yeah, not the past, the pastoral. The,
What's that referring to? I'm
that's it's all about shepherds, countryside, simple life, stuff like
oh,
that.
pastoral, I guess in the pastors. I see.
Yes,
Oh, that's what it's referring to. Okay, that makes sense.
yeah. So the name for that is Theocritus. There's also a Hesiod, and this became so big that people were still a couple of centuries later. People were still at it, and in 18th century, you got people dressing up as shepherds and all that. Um, I guess because the city life was becoming kind of a downer, and the countryside was attractive, and it was all very simple. There was some charming. I remember reading at some point a charming romance about a shepherd and a shepherdess, and the little shepherdess is showing the shepherd how to make love, and it's all very charming and cute. So that's what that's
And not
about.
at all like George R. R. Martin would write that scene.
No, I don't think so. No, probably not. Probably
Yeah.
not.
Mr. Martin, I love you, but you're gross sometimes.
Yeah, he really is. I'll be back very shortly. I have to take a quick break. So say something disgusting while I'm gone.
It's all about love, and love is all that you have, and love is basically just sex, and you can't do anything about it. Yep. Needless to say, I don't actually believe that. I'm just memeing. Oh,
I'm right there. Okay, sorry about that. Let's see. And I think I was where was I in terms of priests? I think next time I'll put some of these names on the presentation, but I didn't get time today because I was fighting with the Prezi, and then I really wanted to get the images in there. So okay, so drama. And this is where a lot of it. Well, they invented tragedy and comedy. So more of the tragedy, needless to say, is a downer. Here's some interesting remarks about Greek tragedy that I found in a book. This book is called The Greeks by a chap whose last name is Kitto.
Kitto or Cato?
Kitto. Don't know what kind of a name that is. So the point is that the dramatists have no interest in being desire to be realistic, he says. And he's talking about there's no intention. He's writing a play about Aeschylus is writing a play about the Persians. He had no intention of writing an historical play, but a play rather on the idea that hubris, in this case, the wanton defiance of the will of heaven shown by the Persian king, is inevitably punished by heaven.
Yeah, it's a similar mentality that's shared by pretty much all of Judean literature. You cannot defy God. He'll always mess you up. The one thing I do like about Greek mythology is kind of all this stuff about the nature of like the psyche and how each myth in the Greek pantheon relates to either something in real life or has something in relation to like the mind. Like Theseus and the Minotaur is definitely an amazing construct for kind of learning about stuff like that, where you have the Minotaur, which represents the bestial nature of humanity. You have the Theseus representing reason and order. You have, or at least the ideal man as Greece saw it, which is definitely not the ideal man as we see it now. Yeah.
No, but he was the ancestor of the Athenians, if I remember correctly.
Yeah. And then the labyrinth is the human mind. And kind of even like Hercules. Hercules is representative of, he's the Greek Superman in a lot of ways, quite literally.
Yeah.
He is basically able to defeat all of the things that Greece want to kind of imagine themselves being able to defeat.
Yeah.
Where like they wanted to be able to defeat nature because nature was something to be respected, but she was an ornery lady who would bite you in the butt whenever she wanted to.
Not to put too fine a point on it, but yes.
And also like conquers foreign monarchs, takes the Gyrion's cattle, takes the Amazons, takes the Cretan bull, all sorts of stuff.
Yeah.
And then finally, in the form of when he brings Cerberus up from the depths of the underworld, he conquers death.
Yeah, Hercules got around all right.
Yeah. The 12 labors are an interesting endeavor.
Yeah. So in terms of the drama, it's like you were saying, this chap says it is not the event, but its inner meaning that Aeschylus is dramatizing. And if the historical events in any particular do not express the inner meaning clearly enough, he alters them. So Now we begin, the author says again, now we begin to see the connection between a good many of the qualities of the Greek, between his confidence in reason, his strong sense of form, his love of symmetry, his creative or constructive bent, his tendency to rely on a priori reasoning. And there was another example here. They have an example from Agamemnon, which is by Aeschylus again. So the plot is very brief. Agamemnon comes home. He brings with him a captive princess Cassandra. Clytemnestra, his wife, murders them both. She says that he deserved it because he sacrificed their daughter to Artemis in order that the expedition might proceed. Then her paramour, Aegisthus, says that he deserved it for a different reason. That is all. He contrasts it with Shakespeare. With Shakespeare, you've got all these digressions. In Greece, you don't have that except for the chorus. The chorus aren't really digressions. They're commenting on the meaning of the action. So,
Shakespeare is interesting.
Yep, and the Atrides, the Agamemnon sacrifices his daughter, or tries to anyway, because Artemis rescues her. Then, so he gets murdered by his wife, Clytemnestra. So Electra goads Orestes, her brother, into killing his mother. So we got a whole bunch of one murder leads to the other, until finally Orestes goes into exile and he meets Iphigenia, and finally there's some kind of peace. But until then, it's like one murder leads to another.
He's also tormented by the Furies for a long time.
Yes, he was. So that's Aeschylus' Oresteia. It's a trilogy of plays. Agamemnon, I don't remember what the other two are called. Sorry. And Sophocles is concerned with Oedipus.
Yeah. The man who gave us the word the Oedipal complex. Him and Sigmund Freud.
Freud's annoying, but yes.
I haven't studied much of it. It's kind of mostly just like the idea that the man wants to kill his father and replace his mother. There's kind of a lot of like replacing kind of the old stuff with the new. Lots of strange stuff like that.
Yeah, I think it's a little passé now.
Yeah, kind of.
Luckily. But so they move, that the basic idea, they try to avoid it by having Oedipus, avoid the destiny by moving Oedipus somewhere else and having him adopted by someone else. But of course, that's the reason why it happens in the first place, because he meets his father on the road not knowing him, kills him, then marries his mother not knowing who she is.
And then they have kids.
Then they have kids, and Oedipus, he's doing an investigation to find out something. I think maybe it has to do with who the killer of his father is, and he finds out the whole story and blinds himself.
Yeah.
So that's Oedipus the king.
And then he just wanders around.
He wanders around. That's Oedipus at Colonus. He wanders around, attended by his daughter Antigone. And then Antigone, in her own play, she wants to bury her brother. Her brother, it's an act of piety to bury her brother, but the thing is that the ruler of the city had said, that no, because he sent wars, he brought soldiers, pardon me, against the city. So you can't do that. That won't do. So he's like, that's not allowed. So she buries him anyway, and he wants to punish her. In the end, I guess in the end she dies. I don't know if he kills her by accident, on purpose, or
He probably
what.
kills her. It's probably not an accident.
Yeah, I mean, I think, and I think he repents afterwards or feels remorse afterwards for killing her, if I remember correctly. I read this long ago in secondary school, but I've forgotten a lot of the details. So that's the tragedy.
Good old Oedipus.
What does Theseus to do with it?
Good old
Apparently,
Oedipus.
Theseus is in this play too.
I think Theseus was like part of the investigation or something.
Yeah.
He was the judge.
Oh where, O God, where is there any hope? Enter Theseus. Now, daughters, dry your tears. Kind death has gently dealt with him, and we share in his blessing. We must not weep. Our grief would provoke the gods to anger. So,
Yeah. Theseus is kind of romanticized by Midsummer Night's Dream in a lot of ways.
Oh, that play's a riot. I didn't watch the whole play, but there's a bit where the working class people do a play based on Pyramus and Thisbe, the myth of Pyramus and Thisbe.
It's just absolutely ridiculous. It's a complete farce.
Yeah, it's
Comical tragedy. This is some and marvelously fine snow, or something. I can't remember the exact line that Theseus says, but it's like something marvelous. It just says like, this is some.
Yeah, there's something about I see my Thisbe's voice, and something about wanting to hear her face.
And also like, don't mind me. I'm not a real lion. Don't be scared.
Oh yeah, I was just thinking about that. I'm just Hoo-Ha the joiner. And if any of you ladies should blanch or whatever for pity on my life, where's that effect?
Yeah. One of the things the gags that I like about it is kind of like Bottom says, you would roar too terribly. Let me play the lion too.
Yeah.
It's like, you would roar too terribly. You would frighten the ladies. And so the gag is that they get a guy that when they do the play, the guy playing the lion does le roar. Goes, instead of going like an actual lion, he does le roar.
And then he makes that speech, or maybe probably before he makes the speech, actually. I know after he makes the speech, I'm guessing it must be.
Probably. But I just, like, he just goes, like, I just saw an adaptation of the play at the Utah Shakespeare Festival where the guy is this large, rather muscular French guy, and he just goes, le roar. As a direct imitation, actually.
Yeah. So that's Sophocles' Theban plays. Looks like we've got Eurydice. What is Eurydice doing in here? This must be before she died then.
Yeah, probably.
Must be, because
Yeah.
Eurydice dies like, because this isn't even about Orpheus. And needless to say, there's always something disappointing at the end of a Greek legend. Orpheus goes to the underworld. Not in this play. I don't know what he goes to the underworld. He
He fails to get her back because
he fails to get her back, and then his immediate reaction is, "Women cannot be trusted, so I'm going to get into pederasty instead." Because women, I'm going to abandon women and get into pederasty because women clearly cannot be trusted. And,
I did not hear that bit of the story.
well, that's there's something about that in Ovid anyway, which we'll get to Ovid later. It might not be until next time. But yeah, so then the Maenads tear him to pieces.
I thought it was because he was banging on his. The version I heard, maybe it was because it was changed to be more child friendly. Was he started banging on his lyre so badly, or at least the sound that it produced was so bad that the Maenads went crazy and tore him apart.
Nope, it had to do with his abandoning women. He's dissing women. The women feel so the women feel offended. So, and these are all drunk women,
Well,
as you know.
Drunk crazy women who are Dionysus' simps.
Not to put a point on it, yes.
Or sycophants, to keep with the more eloquent and cultured thing. I had to put on appearances somehow.
Yeah. So that's Sophocles, and Euripides has one of Euripides' plays is actually about the Maenads. It's called the Bacchae, Bacchae. The Maenads and Dionysus arrive in this town. The ruler wants to suppress them because he wants to be governed by reason. So Dionysus comes and takes revenge. So that's that. He also wrote a Medea. We hinted at the story of Medea earlier. And there were Trojan women being in captivity. And having pretty much
based on the parties that I've heard that the Maenads have, that governor is probably justified.
What's probably justified?
The banning of the Maenads and all that from wherever his city is, that's probably justified, honestly.
The Romans banned them at various points.
Probably smart. They seem like they're pretty nuts.
Yeah. I mean, we'd ban them today, certainly.
Are you sure?
If you did it in public, we'd probably ban it. I mean, in private, I mean, I guess it's polyamory and that, but still.
Well, so long as I think so long as it's not not in a place where kids could see, I think that probably nobody would probably mind. So long as if it's in a house or a sectioned off forest where you've kind of arranged the forest so it's as hey, can we rent this forest for the evening? We promise we will not do anything too bad to it.
Yeah. I mean, but of course, the whole thing with the Maenads is they just go anywhere. They're not bound by anything. They just waltz in wherever.
Yeah, they cray.
They're pretty much they are crazy. Yeah. So the Trojan women, I think that's the women in captivity. The Trojan women, led by what's her name? Is it Andromache or Hecuba?
It is one or the other.
Or maybe both. Both of them might be there.
Yeah, since I think he was kind of an interesting character. I have a lot of sympathy for that poor woman.
Yeah,
Priam.
yeah, it kind of was a downer, like lots of other things.
Oh yeah, the whole Trojan War is a really, really sad story.
Yeah. I don't know if it helps that it's probably not historical in the form that we have it, because things are just as bad actually do happen.
Yeah, honestly.
So, in terms of comedy, we've got Aristophanes, and Greek comedy is, how should we say, there's lots of political and cultural commentary in it, but it's also very, I'm trying to think of a way to put this. Not, I don't want to say dirty, but
It's satirical.
yeah, it's satirical, but it's
Salacious.
Yeah. That's a good word.
Salacious with salacious work. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, there's a like we might have a.
I try to use. Oh, go for it. Sorry.
Sorry, what were you saying?
I was saying I try to use the good vocabulary my lawyer or your mother and my bookworm lawyer mother imparted to me.
Yeah, good idea. Good idea. Because yeah, they'll be like, you'll have naked women and stuff. The chaps wearing cod pieces, and there's
All hail, king of the nudists.
Yeah, I don't think the women were generally naked, but they'd come on naked at some point, maybe during the intermission, and
You don't say.
And they would have some of them have the stage direction defecates. That comes up as a stage direction in at least one of his plays.
That's one way of putting it.
Well, that's what it said in the translation. So. And one interesting one is the clouds about education, and old-fashioned education is like teaches people morals and all this other good stuff, which of course, as you can see, there's loads of morals in Greek mythology. So they learn. In the old education, you learn decency and morals and all this stuff. But now you've got the new education where at the time there were these people running around called sophists who would say all sorts of bizarre things. Like there was one chap who proved that nothing exists, and so Aristophanes, whether correctly or not, is lumping in Socrates with all these people. So Socrates turns up in the clouds as a character, but is not at all the same Socrates that you'd find in Plato's dialogues. So he's basically kind of a charlatan. So that was interesting to read about. Then there's the frogs, where Bacchus goes to the underworld to find out who the best tragic poet is. And since Sophocles is still alive, they couldn't use him. So it's the competition is between Euripides and Aeschylus. And Aeschylus wins because he's the good old-fashioned traditional one, and Euripides is this modern, flippant one. So good old Aeschylus wins. Pardon the spoiler. And then there's one called The Birds, where a bunch of birds cheat the gods out of their sacrifices.
I imagine those birds were not very well treated.
I don't remember how it ends. I don't actually remember what happens. Did the gods get revenge? I don't actually remember. Because you see, you got the smoke from the sacrifices goes up to the gods to nourish them, right? But now these birds are hanging out in the clouds in the way, and they're intercepting the sacrifice. So what are the gods supposed to do now?
Sounds like the Sliphian birds.
The Huhais?
Well, maybe it's kind of the birds that were maybe the harpies or something that were tormenting that one king who was able to see the future.
Yeah. Oh, we actually have someone in chat. I'm sorry I didn't greet you earlier. I was in the chat. I was focusing on looking at my notes. Kitto, yes. Kitto, yes, that's the chap. And the book is called The Greeks. It's an old book. It's old. When I say old, it's older than I am. When it came out, my parents were in middle school.
It's Greek, older than Hercules.
It's older than I am, and yeah, he's British, definitely British. The heroes as the defeated foreigners. She says, a display of compassion so the Athenians could suffer with the enemy. It could be a mockery of the defeated because tragedy is always a serious representation. Oedipus and Colonus is a great play. It shows a lot of Sophocles' maturity and the freedom that poor Oedipus tries to find after what happened to him and his children. Okay, the Bacchae. She mentions the Helena of Euripides, which I guess is about, I wonder if that's about the Egyptian Helen, the story that Helen was taken to Egypt. And the Helen in Troy was actually a fake.
Interesting idea.
So I think that's what she's talking about. Oh, she's still here. That's good. Good. It's nice to have someone around. Pardon me a second. I need to check my notes again. Oh yeah, the frogs, the birds, and there's also a new comedy called Menander. Menander is the chap who wrote the new comedy of the 4th century, after the Peloponnesian War. Because a lot of this is in the context of the Peloponnesian War, and maybe we'll talk about that later. I have a feeling we're not going to even get to Rome today, but that's all right. Can do that. We can do part 2 next week and cover Rome then. We can do part 1 could have 2 parts. We can have part 1, and part 1, part 2.
Oh, you could just name it Lecture 1, or just name it like Course 1. Like,
yeah.
History of Literature Lecture 1, and just go with that.
Yeah.
And I will be there to help you out as best I can. Though some topics I will only be able to offer pithy commentary upon.
Yeah, well, we're getting into stuff that you'll be a little more familiar with because it's not India and China and stuff. I thought I should at least mention those, though.
Yeah, it seems as though kind of for a while, there's kind of the idea of exploring the unknown, figuring out finding out what is the beyond the bounds of what we know about, kind of like the King Solomon's Mines, the Tarzans, the John Carter of Mars, that sort of thing. And kind of India has definitely had India and Africa have definitely had big influences on those particular genres.
Yeah, and I will be mentioning Thucydides presently, and that's where we talk about the historian. He's the historian of the Peloponnesian War. You know that Athens is. Sorry.
Oh, okay, that one, yeah.
Yeah, Sparta. You know that Athens and Sparta had a long kind of Cold War thing going on.
Oh
And
yeah, they
eventually,
hated each other.
yeah,
It's almost a meme where it's like that's where the jocks versus nerds thing came from.
yeah, kind of. Sparta was the jocks. Spartans went and they were a military caste. They had a very old-fashioned. They kept using the old iron ingots as money. They even had kings, although the kings were mostly for wartime. Um, they they had they conquered the Messenians and made them their serfs.
Mm-hmm.
Meanwhile, Athens had a league in the Aegean, which was directed against Persia, in theory at least, but it supposedly was voluntary. But some places were forced. Some places joined it voluntarily, but some places were forced to join. And Athens eventually. Originally, the center of it was on Delos or some island, but then they moved it to Athens and became practically an Athenian empire. So the Athenians and the Spartans were having this competition. Eventually, it became a war. The war lasted like 30 years. Sparta won,
Obviously.
but then Athens recovered eventually. But then, of course, after a while, Philip of Macedon came and conquered Greece anyway. And then eventually the Romans conquered Greece. But Sparta was the last place to be conquered, the last place in Greece to be conquered by the Romans, if I remember correctly. Because those Spartans were tough.
Yeah, they knew how to fight.
Yep. Sparta is ancient Greek for Chad, probably.
Undoubtedly.
Undoubtedly. So,
Let's just go with alpha male.
yeah, very alpha. Kind of disgusting.
Oh yeah. There's in Sparta, as far as I know, there's like an actual like pederasty system for
One of the weirdest things in history is how prevalent that vice has been.
yeah, like old Catholic like priests had that problem. You had the Greeks had that problem. Various other institutes, probably just mostly. Weirdly enough, like priestly castes seem to frequently have this problem.
Yeah, the Arabs had something like that too. Some of the Arabic classical verses on that, which no thank you.
Yeah, no, I don't like little boys at
Not in
all.
that sense.
Oh, I don't like them. Period. Period. They're mostly immature and stupid, and get up to really dumb things unless they're boring like me.
Yeah, they're immature. That's to be expected. But Herodotus. So in terms of historians, we've got Herodotus, um, Persian wars, descriptions of Egypt, etc. Um, people think of him as being, pardon me, that's disgusting, a teller of tales. But a friend of mine who is kind of like a classicist says that actually he's probably fairly reliable. So that's what my friend says, for what that's worth.
I think, one person described on the History Channel described it as the world's first blogger.
Yeah, it's very lively. I'm not sure I ever actually read them completely. I don't think I did, but I read bits and bobs of it because he went to Egypt, he went to Babylon, all these other places, and left descriptions and stories about them. So Herodotus, if you're looking for some inspiration for a story, you could probably do worse than go to Herodotus.
There's a lot of neat stuff in his histories.
Yeah. Yeah, that's interesting. The League of Delos. It's quite interesting how Athens had to keep becoming more imperialistic to survive, and in the end, those ambitions destroyed them. Yeah. Yeah, in some places it's what people told him. The priests told me this, the priests told me that. He's probably reasonably. I mean, it's hard to tell because were the standards of reliability the same back then? So I think it started out with his wanting to tell a story of the Persian wars. Those were like the mythical, not really mythical, and not this in the sense of not being true, but kind of like a foundation myth of 5th century classical Greece is the fight with the Persians. That's kind of the backdrop. I mean, the backdrop is the mythology, and the historical backdrop is the conflict with the Persians. The Persian Empire having conquered Asia Minor and the various little Greek states in Asia Minor also, and then they tried to conquer Greece proper. And they failed, and I think most of the Greek city-states got freed. And so Herodotus tells the story of that. Thucydides tells the story of the Peloponnesian War. And there are a couple of things to point out here. One is Victoria Amat. Let me make sure I'm pronouncing that correctly. Make sure I'm saying that correctly. Amat sounds right. Says the ambitions destroyed them because remember, it's all about what the meaning, what's the fundamental meaning of it, not just what happened, but what the meaning of it is. So it's a moral lesson in how they were eventually destroyed by ambition. And the one of the key examples of that is the Athenians deciding to do an expedition all the way to Sicily. Sicily at that point was kind of part of Greece. Archimedes was in Sicily, if I'm not mistaken. Let's see, where was I? They did an expedition all the way to Sicily, and of course that depleted manpower and turned out to be a mess. And eventually they got beaten by the Spartans. I'm not sure if Thucydides covers the bit where they got defeated. Yeah, the expedition. Where I'm not sure if Thucydides covers the conquest by Sparta. I think he may have left off before the end of the war. Um, but the other thing is that he makes up speeches that he thinks people ought to have said. And this became a kind of a bad example for later Roman and Greek and Renaissance historians. They would just flat out make these huge speeches. I'll be right back.
Oh, no worries. So, of war play through the Blade of Galadriel, which is like it's interesting. It's going okay so far. I quite enjoy it. The differences in game style is very interesting, to say the least.
Yes?
I do like the light. Oh, I'm just saying, like, I'm playing, just talking about a game that I'm playing currently.
Oh. Okay, so that's what that is.
Currently,
Okay, good.
Since it is kind of interesting that, like, you definitely, as like the Tolkien nerd, would be like, what? Like, Isildur is a Nazgul. Like, they
What
made
the?
Isildur into a Nazgul.
What the? What the? Yeah, so Thucydides, he makes these speeches where of what people ought to have said, where he gives the best possible case, and that brings us into rhetoric and all that, which we'll have to say something about later and probably next time, because we're probably going to have to find a stopping place, which means we won't end up actually finishing Greece, which is kind of, well, let's see what happens. Maybe I'll get time to say something, because probably in a quarter hour or so I have to run off on my walk, run off on my walk before the book club starts up. But that's kind of Thucydides. That's putting it like much more briefly than I really ought to be. I wonder if I can find a nice little quote from Thucydides to give an idea, because I have one of my books here, Thucydides the Moralist. Let's see, do they have any actual quotes from him in here? That's what I want to know. Come on, give me a quote. I need a quote. I want to find a quote from Thucydides. Okay, here's one. The truest cause of the war, the growth of the power of Athens, and the alarm which it inspired in Sparta made war inevitable. He says, but that's not what I was looking for. I wanted to find one of his weird speeches. Maybe this book has it. If not, then you'll just have to take my word for it. As historian, 138
You never
to 50.
lie, or never facetious, at least.
Who, me?
Yeah.
No, never. 138 to. I want to see if I can find some little speeches. Here's one. A speech by Pericles, the leader of the Athenians. Let me get back into here. Hey dear, sadly not. I haven't read that, I'm afraid. Um, I have summoned this special assembly to remind you of certain facts and to protest against some of your errors. Remember, it is more important for the polis, the city-state, to prosper than its individual members, for if the individual members prosper and the polis is ruined, then they are ruined with her. But if a citizen is unfortunate while the city is not, he has a much better hope of mending his fortunes. You, in your private afflictions, are angry with me that I persuaded you to declare war. Therefore you were angry also with yourselves that you voted with me. You took me to be what I am, superior to most in foresight, in oratorical ability, for if a man cannot explain himself clearly, he might as well have no foresight, in patriotism and in personal honesty. But if you voted me with me because you took me to be like this, you cannot fairly charge me with doing you an injury. I have not changed. It is you who have changed. A calamity has befallen you, and you cannot persevere in the policy you chose when all was well. It is the weakness of your resolution that makes my advice seem to have been wrong. It is the unexpected that most breaks a man's spirit. You have a great polis and a great reputation. You must be worthy of them. Half the world is yours, the sea. Attica you must think of as only a small garden surrounding a mansion. If you shrink from the labors of sovereignty, do not claim any of its honors, and do not think that you can safely lay down an empire which is in fact a tyranny. For you, the alternative to empire is slavery. The blows of the enemy we must bear with courage, those of the gods with resignation. You must not blame me for misfortunes which are beyond calculation, unless you're also going to give me the credit for successes which were uncalculated. And so he agreed with them. So they agreed with them, but they also fined him. But then afterwards they elected him again. So that was all Pericles, according to Thucydides, who almost certainly made up that speech.
Very likely.
Yeah, that's how he worked. He would just make up these speeches. That was considered. He had them say what he thought they ought to have said or would have said in the circumstances. But of course, it's all directed to this general moral. Basically, what's the meaning? What's trying to find the meaning of the events, and what is the meaning of this argument versus that argument, and presenting the arguments in the best, clearest, and most elegant possible way. The embassy to Melos. I wonder if that's in here. I wonder if that's in this book. The Melos is let's see. I can look up Melos and see what happens. I don't know if they have the whole speech. Da-da-da. Da-da-da. Well, he talks about the barbarous treatment of Melos, an innocent neutral, how the assembly turned its fury on unsuccessful commanders. Okay, blah, blah, blah. So these are ways how the Athenians behaved badly after Thucydides was gone. And there's also, let me see, 151 footnote. I don't even see a footnote on here. All right, that has to be a mistake. No. Okay, let me see if this other book has that, and if not, then we're just gonna have to do without it. But yeah, they mistreated Melos. It's been a long time since I knew about any of this stuff.
First time for me.
Yeah, a lot of this stuff. I don't actually have the book Thucydides. I just have books that quote from it. or refer to it. So I don't actually have the book in hand. So,
There you go.
sorry?
I don't know why, but I'm thinking about Tom Bombadil.
Yes, Tom Bombadil would not have made a very good ancient Greek.
No, he's way too chill.
Yeah. And another historian, and the third historian I have listed here is Xenophon. Yeah, the Athenians, they started out, supposedly it was a league for the defense against the Persians, and then it turned into an empire. All the judgments were made by the Athenians. The capital was in Athens. Some places did join supposedly voluntarily. I don't know how voluntary it really was. So, yeah. Athens did recover decently after the war. I mean, for a while there, they were under the tyrants, the so-called 30 tyrants. But then they recovered okay in the 4th century. They never became quite so powerful, but they were moderately powerful. And then, of course, all that came crashing down, and we'll be having to allude to that later.
The Great.
Yeah, Alexander the Great. Philip of Macedon asked Alexander the Great. So, because we're going to have to leave shortly, let me see. I do need to mention Xenophon, author of the Anabasis, which I think, if I remember correctly, they got lost. He and his men got lost in Asia Minor, and then they eventually they found their way back to the sea. They were lost in Asia Minor and find their way back to the sea. Xenophon also has written a few dialogues about Socrates. So most of our Socratic dialogues are from Plato, but there is a few from Xenophon. So that's Xenophon. That's Xenophon. Xenophon. I haven't really read him, so I can't say as much about that.
I don't know why, but for some reason that just makes me think of the song "On the Bridge of Danio," specifically in the original language. It's Xenophon Davion, only danse, Xenophon Davion, only danse, vous l'avons.
Oh, is that French?
Yes, I believe so.
Back in the day. So
I just remember that because of ever heard of Rusty and Rosie? I would watch that all the time. And
it doesn't ring a bell.
It's a pair of foxes or something. And then it's designed to teach kids the alphabet through various charming sing-along stuff, and also other like classical things like various pieces of music, stuff like that. It's really neat.
Yeah. So let's see. For the rest of Greece, I have. I'll tell you what I have for the rest of Greece and Rome, because we're probably not going to get to it today, because I should be going on my walk shortly. But we're going to have to talk about. Sorry?
You got to get that walk in.
Yeah. Otherwise, I'll just feel like. Otherwise, I don't have my exercise, and I feel weird, and I feel like walk. And it's yeah. And then I don't sleep well either if I don't get my nice little walk. So dialogue. So we'll have to talk about dialogue, and there we're talking about Plato. Even though Xenophon also composed at least one dialogue, he composes, and we'll have to talk about Plato and dialogue. Of course, Plato also features in philosophy. So We'll have to talk about. We'll have to at least say a little something about Aristotle, Zeno, and there are actually two Zenos: Stoicism, Epicureanism, uh, Cynicism, the Sophists. A little something about science, and I'll have to talk about rhetoric, because rhetoric is and becomes very important in Rome, in the Middle Ages, and in the Renaissance, and even today. So we'll have to say something about rhetoric, and then we can move on to Rome. And then there's speeches of Demosthenes. I'll have to mention those briefly. Then we jump ahead a few centuries to Rome. Epic, mainly Virgil. A couple others like Statius. Oratory, like Cicero, Quintilian. Lyric, we'll have to say something about lyric, sadly. Virgil, Horace, Ovid. Actually, I'm not sure that Metamorphoses count as lyric, because Metamorphoses are retellings of myth. Catullus, Martial, snarky epigrammist, and historians, Livy, Caesar, Tacitus, and then the other stuff, Apuleius, the guy who turns into a donkey, Petronius, disgusting, Plotinus, philosopher, Marcus Aurelius, philosopher, Seneca, so-called philosopher, but kind of sleazy, and stuff like that. So that'll be Rome. Then hopefully we'll be able to say something about the early Christians, the Greek and Latin fathers. We'll have to say something about Augustine. St. Augustine, very important. And then we can move on to the Middle Ages. Some of the Latin stuff, that stuff will actually be fairly interesting and will be relevant to things that people know about, like King Arthur, if there was a King Arthur, Charlemagne.
It's kind of funny. We just barely got through Michael Bay's horrific bastardization of the King Arthur myth.
Kill it! I haven't even seen it, but I know it's awful because you said Michael Bay, so I know it's bad.
Well, we basically Transformers existed during King Arthur's time, and a giant mechanical dragon was the thing that gave King Arthur his victory over the Saxons at Baden Hill.
Yeah, and in answer to the chat, we're not going to get to cover all this today. Plutarch. Oh, God. Plutarch. Oh, Plutarch. I must make sure I include Plutarch. Yeah, Plotinus. Yeah, I think, if I remember correctly, he was a pantheist. But yeah, Plutarch has to come in there somewhere. And no, we're not going to cover all this today. I'm going to have to leave on my walk shortly. This is what we're going to be covering next week. And then hopefully we'll get time to do the Celtic stuff, which should be very interesting and amusing and entertaining, and that's more directly relevant to fantasy. So that will be fun.
Yeah, and also it'll kind of like Welsh mythology, like with Iran and all of the stuff and the Mabinogi, and I need to do some research on that because I really enjoy the Chronicles of Britain, which has a lot of stuff to do with all of that stuff.
Yes.
Because have you heard of the Chronicles of Britain?
Oh yeah. That came out in that's like is this the chap who was the assistant pig, the Black Cauldron, that stuff?
Yes.
Yeah, I've heard of that. For some bizarre reason, I've never actually read it. But it's sort of random what you've read and what you haven't read, you know?
It's it's definitely classic fantasy, and like you can definitely like it's definitely like it's aged okay, I guess. Like it makes sense, but it's like and Taran himself actually has a decent arc to him, which I appreciate. But he starts off as really annoying, and he's still petty in book two, which is frustrating.
Yeah.
But he's not a bad guy.
Is he just basically a kid starting out? I mean, he's like in his teens or something.
Pretty much, yeah.
Okay, then that explains right there why he'd be annoying. No offense if anyone here is a teenager.
Oh, teenager. Although teenage life is not for is definitely for nobody.
Yes, it's not for everybody. It's not for anybody. Yeah, so I mean, teenagers are even annoying to other teenagers, especially to other teenagers, actually.
Yeah.
So
Yep,
yeah,
hate teenagers. Yep, teenagers hate teenagers.
yeah, I hated teenagers more as a kid as a teenager than I do now.
Yeah, you're not wrong.
Especially when I was in the U.S. because in Ireland, for some reason, kids are more obnoxious when they're like maybe 7, 8, 9, and less obnoxious in their teens for whatever reason. I mean, they're still fun. I mean, they're not all bad when they're 7, 8, 9 either. I got on okay, but they did used to yell that I robbed the Count Balerion robbed the bank. Count Balerion robbed the bank. But yeah, that was. But yeah, the teenagers, God help us. Anyway, they ruined the teenage. Yeah, pretty much. Pretty much. So that will be fun, and maybe we can do that next week and finish part 1. And the good news is maybe then I can add some of this stuff to the presentation, some of the text of the presentation, so that it's a bit, because you don't have to. So you have the names written down. It's easier. It must have been pretty awful when I was doing the Chinese names, and they weren't showing up on presentation because they're in my text document. So I think because I need to go on my walk.
The main thing that I'm seeing is kind of just like the well, it's mainly just like I'm seeing like it's not on full screen, so there's kind of just like one of the things that I liked about kind of like universe about going to college was actually like they were able to full screen the entire presentation, so that like there was kind of there was just kind of the picture in the middle.
Before I go,
I'll figure it out.
I mean, I can do it. It's just a matter of then I have to keep toggling in and out because I'm looking at the text, and I'm looking at the chat, and I'm looking at this and that. But as long as we're about to leave, I may as well show it to you full screen for a couple of minutes. That's that. This is like an old manuscript of Homer. I'm not sure what of Homer. Is it the Iliad or the Odyssey? I think it's the Iliad. So, needless to say, we can all read that.
It showing up as full screen for me.
Odd.
It actually isn't showing up as full screen for me for some reason. It's still like the Open Office Manager document with the picture occupying only about 60% of the screen, I think.
Odd. I got it covering the entire. Well, not the picture, but the slide covering the entire screen here. But if you can't see it anyway, I might as well escape.
Yeah, it's kind of I think there's something like presentation mode somewhere. Like there's actually a mode called presentation mode that allows you to just do the slide.
Presentation
And
mode.
fill the spot. I'd up.
Let's see what. Let me see. I mean, since I have to go anyway in a moment, I might as well spend a couple of minutes searching for that. And if I don't find it, then there is slideshow. F5. She was saying something about F5. How about that?
Yeah, try that.
Do you see it now?
It's not showing up there for some reason.
Where?
Still not showing up. Huh.
You'd think it would be under view.
This is why I use Prezi. I don't have to worry about this.
Yeah, but Prezi ended up being like a big screaming mess when I tried to use it last night. I was like, I went through all the trouble to enter the text in the parent, and why am I seeing on the individual slides topic 1, topic 2, topic 3? This was after it forced me to download Chrome so I could use it at all, and then the search thing wasn't working. I was like, hang the whole boiling. I'm just going to use this thing. It looks, and this may not look perfect, but it looks a sight better than my Prezi was going to look, right? Because my Prezi is going to look like absolute rot. So compared to how my Prezi was going to look, this is.
I can show you how to work the Prezi.
This is God's gift to the universe compared to what it would look like if I were doing the Prezi. So it's, on the whole, I think this is the least bad option. It's not actually PowerPoint. It's the Open Office equivalent of PowerPoint.
Okay.
As presentation only. Well, I can see. I bet that's possible to do that, because the same things that you can do in Microsoft Office, you can generally do in Open Office. You can generally do the same things. It's not that different. So if it's possible to do that in Hoo-Ha, in PowerPoint, it's probably possible to do it in this thing. So I can try doing that and see what happens. If not, this isn't too bad. I don't think this is too bad. Let me see what it looks like in YouTube, and then I'm going to have to go on my walk. Yeah, I think it looks, because just the general idea is just to, there's a weird kind of, it's showing stuff on YouTube that I did like several minutes ago. So there's a bit of a lag there. So anyway, we'll see. Maybe we can finish part 1 next week. We'll have to see how our schedules are working out. But yeah, this ended up okay though, I think. I was a little awkward at first, but it ended up okay, because at first I was talking to myself, so it's like really kind of awkward. But I think it helps to have at least 1 or 2 other people around, so that if there's a moment of silence, they can say something, even if it's just something stupid or disgusting. So
yeah, what can you do? So I will be here to give you whatever help I can, minimal as that may be.
fair enough. Okay, so I am going to we're going to have to leave it there. I'm going to have to, let me see. I'm going to have to end the broadcast there. So we will be resuming ancient Greece next time. Same bat time, same Baleriology time, same Baleriology channel. Very Baleriology. So have a riot, you lot. And hopefully, okay.